panorama of speed, color, drama, and excitement. The American Sports Cavalcade.
Memphis, Tennessee. Steeped rich in the traditions of the Old South, you can stroll through a downtown park and watch the lazy Mississippi roll by the shores of Memphis. Or visit Mud Island, taking the monorail out and see a total representation of the entire length of the Mississippi. Memphis, of course, is the home of the blues and great music. Spend some time at Elvis Presley's home at Graceland. And now Memphis can boast another great attraction, the Memphis International Motorsports Park. This is a multi-purpose racing facility with a half-mile track, a midget track. But today, of course, we focus on the quarter mile of this brand new drag strip. Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Page. You know, the first event at any track is always exciting, and that seems to be especially so today as TNN presents the NHRA Quaker State Mid-South Nationals from Memphis International Motorsports Park. Brand new facility, a lot of questions to be asked, a lot of excitement to come. Let's go trackside now, and my colleague, Steve Evans.
Well, Paul, one of those questions has been answered. The people of West Tennessee were certainly ready for their first ever NHRA championship event. They have packed this brand new park. You know, more even than the incredible performances we've seen this season, everyone's talking about the improvement in existing drag racing facilities and also the creation of new super tracks, something a few years ago we thought we might never see. It all began down in Gainesville, Florida back in March, where the fans enjoyed $1.2 million in improvements, including one of the most impressive grandstands in all of motorsports. Then it was on to Atlanta Dragway, or I should say the new Atlanta Dragway. They knocked down everything but the timing tower, and with $4 million built just a superb facility. And of course here in Memphis, well, $7 million speaks for itself. To bring us up to date on what's happened this weekend, let's go to the legend, Big Daddy Don Garlits, who takes his drag racing very seriously. Don?
This has definitely been the race of upsets. Folks, it started right out in qualifying. The man that was first into the 4 seconds, our current points leader, and the winner of the last 2 national events, Mr. Eddie Hill, failed to make the show. Watch this and see if you can tell me what happened. Said it was because he smoked the tires, you were right. Look at this. After his 4th attempt, Steve talked with a disappointed Eddie Hill.
Well, it was my fault. On the first lap up there, I had watched 5 guys in front of me smoke the tires right on the line. And so to try to compensate for that, I was very easy with throttle. I just squeezed it off the line and then nailed it at about half track and ran 277, but I spent too much time soft pedaling at the early part of the track. So not the car's fault, driver and me doing the tuner's fault. I missed the tune up on this run, still too aggressive for this track.
Sorry, we won't see you tomorrow.
Well, me too. I really hate to miss this.
In funny car, a surprising Chuck Etchels upset the #1 qualifier, John Force, when John became concerned with a tricky starting line and lost his concentration.
John, your 565 is beaten by a 578. What happened?
Can I say, brain fade on the starting line. She was spinning the tires, and I was trying to smoke the tires on the dry. I was trying to concentrate and totally did not leave at all. I was concentrating on my brake and trying not to deep stage the car, and I wasn't using the brake handle, and it was something new that we tried, and it cost me a race.
Upsets continue to be the talk of the pits when the #1 qualifier, Bruce Allen, was beaten by Tony Christian.
Well, another of the #1 qualifiers falls. Unfortunately, it's you, Bruce Allen.
That's the way it goes. Now, track's a little tricky right now. We got out there in second gear and started shaking the tires, and I had to pedal it, and Tony Christian got by me. He's certainly capable of doing that.
If you could advise any pro stockers yet to run, what would you tell them to do?
Leave lower, these cars all got RPM limiter chips in them on the starting line, and we're just hitting the tires a little too hard and turning the tires square and just shaking them.
So a lower RPM you think would do it?
I think that would help a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
As we get ready to go into the second round of Top Fuel, if there's any one thought that's shared by every pro in the pits here today, it's this tricky track conditions here at Memphis.
So the crowd here already stunned by that series of upsets and wondering now what will come next as Mike Brotherton brings out his Top Fuel dragster. We're in round 2 of Top Fuel, ready to face this man, Gary Ormsby.
No, the driver with lane choice is the one who recorded the quicker elapsed time in the previous round. In this case, it's Gary Ormsby. And Don Garlits, the drivers have been favoring that far lane.
Well, I'll tell you what, Steve, I think that what it is, the drivers have been psyched out. I've seen some good runs come out of the near lane, but the good cars are choosing the far lane, and so the driver thinks, if I don't get that lane, I can't win this race.
And these, of course, are the kings of the drag racing sport. 1,900 pounds, 3,000 horsepower. They're literally landlocked guided missiles. This is Gary Ormsby. He's from Roseville, California, professional drag racer and automobile dealer. He's up against Michael Brotherton, a second-year pro out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Fine equipment and interesting car. And some problems with that car, John. What do you think they're doing?
Well, there's something going wrong there. It's a good possibility that Brotherton may not make this run, because Buster don't let him fool that thing too much. You know, he cuts him right off.
That's right. That's Buster Katz, the chief starter who's been on that starting line for generations.
Look at him make him get back.
Get away from that machine as Mike Brotherton now begins to hitch up to the line. No indication of what's wrong. The crew obviously worried about something at the front of the engine done.
Could have been a fuel leak, because that's where all the fuel lines are, and that's what Buster, he evidently looked in there and thought it was safe, and he's going to let him go.
Off the mark first is Michael Brotherton. Brotherton with a bit of a hole shot, but the big power from California pays off on the far end of 547 for Gary Ormsby at 266 miles per hour. Defeats Michael Brotherton's 585 at 242.
You notice, Steve, Ormsby hazed the tires just a little bit in that far lane. Brotherton got off clean.
Continuing with action now in round number 2 of Top Fuel. Joe Amato, Old Fort, Pennsylvania, ready to face Richard Holcomb.
You can bet that old Joe is really concerned about that starting line, because he's sitting in his car strapped in, and he's watching Ormsby haze the tires. And he knows if he smokes those tires, he's going to be history at this race, just like a lot of the other pros.
On the other hand, he knows that he has done particularly well so far this season. He's been in every final round. And now with Eddie Hill gone, he has a real chance at winning this event. Let's go now down to the far end. Steve is with Gary Ormsby.
Well, Gary, a 547. We're pushing the semifinal round, but those numbers probably aren't going to win here today.
No, Steve, the car broke loose out there. I don't know if it's actually smoked the tires, but I could feel it breaking loose out there. And I think we'll have to go back to our combination we had to run before.
Well, looking at the tires down here, they all look like they're black tracking, trying to tear the center out of the tire, actually.
Yeah, there's a problem with this track and our combination. I think it was a lot of people's combination. But the biggest thing is we changed gears that time and to try it. Figured we had a little easier deal than the next round, and that ain't going to work. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Let's take quickly a look at these tires, and you can see what I mean. You can see the pattern right here where it's spinning all the way down the racetrack. In some cases, it's tearing the rubber off. Ormsby is not having that problem, but it's only running on this much tire, and it's spinning for 1,320 feet.
So obviously, with this brand new facility in Memphis, Tennessee, reading this track and setting the machine up for it has become a very difficult job. So Joe Amato, ready for his round number 2 confrontation. He's been in every final round this year, but he has not yet won one. This time he will face Richard Holcomb from Stockbridge, Georgia, and his Keith Black-powered Top Fuel dragster. There's a good shot of Holcomb as he inches forward toward the line.
You'll notice that Holcomb doesn't have the narrow rear end in the car this weekend. He had to take that out because they wouldn't let him run the wheels backwards. They felt that it might be a safety problem until they were checked properly.
What kind of safety concern would it be?
It would be that the wheel, turned around backwards, bolted to the hub, would not have the same strength as bolted on properly the way it was tested.
It's Amato off the starting line first. He too smoked the tires a little bit, but manages to regain traction and wins by several car lengths over Richard Holcomb, who departs here having his best day ever in NHRA Championship drag racing. Amato won it at 534, 278 miles per hour, to a close 538. It was the whole shot that made it look worse than it was.
Watch Joe backpedal this car and regain the traction. An unbelievable thing under conditions like this. He shoots right out there in front, moves on down the track, puts a nice open on Holcomb, and is going to win the race.
which is what he did. Let's go to the far end and Steve.
I had to pedal it out there. It seemed like it started shaking.
I could hear that.
And so, you know, I was ahead or right alongside him, so, you know, you take a chance and pedal it, and it came back. We changed the wing, but look at it, still blistering the tires. You know, the car is making so much power, we're just trying to get down the track. The track is treacherous out there.
Change the wing, trying to get more downforce and more traction at the far end.
Yeah, last time we spun the tires at the finish line and burned the center right out of them. So we put a bigger wing on the car to try and plant it, and it's still real close.
You're making progress.
Yeah, well, you know, with Daddy out of the race and Dick out, you know, this is the time to try and get some brownie points.
We call them Winston points.
Joe is referring to reigning world champion Dick LaHaye, who is already out of the competition here. In the meantime, back in the funny car pits, Jim Head's crew makes final preparations, putting in the rod bearings as they are getting ready to face R.C. Sherman in round 2 of funny car. But coming up next, more of round 2 in Top Fuel Dragster.
Despite a temperature of 91 degrees, a record for this day in Memphis, 28,000 fans have jammed the stands for the Quaker State Mid-South Nationals. I'm Steve Evans, along with Paul Page and Big Daddy Don Garlett, and it's time for more Top Fuel racing action here in round number 2.
And coming to the line now, Ray Stutz and Dennis Forcell, almost simultaneous burnouts as they are prepared to do battle. Now, Ray Stutz beat Earl Whiting, who shut off in round number 1, and he will face, of course, Dennis Forcell, who had an interesting round 1 confrontation as he took on the reigning world champion, Dick LaHaye. And LaHaye was kind enough to carry our onboard camera for that run.
As we watch LaHaye in the cockpit, we get to see some interesting things. First of all, he stages the car hard with the brake, then he leaves it out with his left-hand thumb, reaches down and short shifts the car so as to get more traction. Still loses though. Steve, talk to Dick.
Well, the world champion has come out on the short end of a very close race. Dick LaHaye, you said if the car didn't perform well today, you were going to make a lot of changes.
That's most certainly it. You know, we've been fighting this thing ever since the first race, and actually at the first race even. And we're going to go back to our old combination, the old engine combination, the clutch combination, and everything. We could get down any track in the country, and, you know, we're pretty disappointed about this whole deal, but, you know, you can't take anything away from Forcell. He ran well, and he beat us fair and square, and that's just the way it goes.
There was some talk of even maybe building a new, longer car mid-season?
That car's in the process right now. We're thinking about leaving for California in the morning. We'll just have to wait and see if we can make it in time for Baton Rouge tonight.
Yeah, I hope we see you there.
You will.
So as a result of that race, Dennis Forcell moved into round number 2. But look at this. Ray Stutz has got a problem. The crew runs out toward the car, and it looks like Dennis Forcell is going to have a bye run as Stutz climbed out of his dragster.
Well, Ray Stutz, the firefighter from Hesperia, California, suddenly found his top fuel dragster with no fire whatsoever. And here is Dennis Forcell, the man who defeated Dick LaHaye in round number 1. And you can bet he'll run as hard as he can. The car very lazy off the starting line. No doubt a very soft clutch, trying not to smoke the tires. A 5.43 second elapsed time. We'll have to wait to see if that holds up the lane choice. 267 miles per hour.
You can certainly see that the car was lazy off the line, Steve, because it didn't start the black track till about halfway down the track.
The drag strip quiet now for just a moment as they tow Ray Stutz's top fueler off the course. We are back in the funny car pits now. This is R.C. Sherman's pits. There he is looking on as they prepare his machine for his run against Jim Head. Let's go to Steve.
Well, Dennis, talk about your contrast. First round, you get the toughest of them all, world champ Dick LaHaye, and second round, you get a freebie.
Yeah, well, you got to take him anywhere you can get him in this deal, and you've heard that 1,000 times, I bet.
There's a lot of talk about the racetrack. It's tricky.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if there's any race where the crew and the tune-up deal's got the most of winning this race, this is the track.
Well, your man, Larry Frazier, nobody craftier than he.
Yeah, he's the best. He's been around a long time, and he's really good when he's allowed to do his thing.
Don't smoke the tires.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Okay. Dennis Forcell goes to the semis.
A very happy Dennis Forcell as action continues in round number 2 of Funny Car here in Memphis. Darrell Gwynn, the number 1 qualifier with a 517, is ready to face Frank Bradley.
And guys, I believe the secret to Darrell Gwynn's success on this racetrack is this very long wheelbase machine. It has been built right to the NHRA limit of 300 inches. That's a very long car. It offers good weight transfer. Do you agree with all of this, Don?
Yes, I do. And he's going to face Frank Bradley, who has another 300-inch car. And Frank Bradley says that he can't believe the traction that long wheelbase generated for him. Frank has even raised the compression ratio on that engine because that chassis gives him so much more traction on the starting line.
Well, you build a short car up until just recently to save weight, and that would maybe compensate, but not now, as the weight limit we explained in Atlanta, our last race coverage, has been moved up to 1,900 pounds. I think you're going to see everybody with a car under 300 inches have a lot of tubing on the floor ready to build a new one.
I absolutely agree with that, Steve.
So Darrell Gwynn ready for his final burnout on a track that has confused many, and you saw that distortion in your picture. That's caused by Darrell Gwynn's ignition, as the man from Miami who beat Robert Reel by a 10th in first round is prepared to face the current speed record holder at over 286 miles an hour, and that, of course, is Frank Bradley.
Frank Bradley wondering right now if the near lane is going to hook up for him. He has seen so many of his fellow competitors lose traction there. Darrell Gwynn on the far side, his engine gobbling fuel at the rate of about, well, they'll burn 100 pounds of fuel on a single run, about 14 gallons. Pre-staged is Bradley, pre-staged is Gwynn. The Christmas tree electronic starting system waiting for the drivers to move forward. Frank is in. Darrell Gwynn nudges those small front wheels into the beams. They are set and ready, and they leave the mark right together. Frank Bradley in the near lane trying to keep up with Darrell Gwynn. He cannot do it. Gwynn's crew like that one. Darrell Gwynn, 5:26. So far, he's controlling this round to a losing 5:48. The winning speed, a big one, 273 miles per hour.
So the stage is now set for the semifinal round in Top Fuel as we take another look at that Mississippi River in miniature on Mud Island. And here are the pairings. Darrell Gwynn will face Gary Ormsby. Gwynn has a lane choice with that run you just saw. And Dennis Purcell will face Joe Amato. Amato will have the lane choice. Now, Steve is with Darrell Gwynn.
Well, Darrell Gwynn feeling good, and he's going to feel better when I tell him he has lane choice next round over Gary Ormsby. Your 5:26 gives you that.
Well, I'll tell you, 5:26 feels real good after getting out of this thing. It's 100 degrees here today, and we knew we'd have our work cut out for us here in the heat. There's so many variables here today. The track is balling up, but 5:26, we're ready. Crew's enthusiastic, and I'm ready too.
You know, 5.0s, 5.10s, it doesn't matter. It's all relative to what the track will take.
That's right. We're here today, and if it takes 5:50s to win the race to here today, I don't care. As long as we're here when the sun goes down is what it's all about.
Let's hope we talk 2 more times.
Thank you very much.
Well, the action continues here at this brand new track at Memphis. And coming up, Pro Stock. His crew working as we're back at the Memphis Motorsports Park as TNN presents the NHRA Quaker State Mid-South Nationals. Remember, he's ready to face Chuck Etchells, who beat John Force, the #1 qualifier, in the first round of Funny Car. My buddy Steve Evans is always interested in new technology, and he claims he's found something really unique.
Everybody who enjoys drag racing reads this publication, National Dragster. It is the Bible of the sport and goes on a weekly basis to all NHRA members. And I have personally always enjoyed the photography work of photo editor Leslie Lovett and his associates. But wait till they see the pictures from the Mid-South Nationals. They've got a new remote-mounted camera that can go right against the wall so that no photographer is in jeopardy. It swivels, it bends. There's a video monitor about 50 feet away. They know exactly what the camera is looking at, and they can trigger the shutter automatically. And also, it telescopes. Watch this thing. They can move it anywhere on the wall and put it at literally any height. Higher and higher. This is incredible. Oh, I can't wait to see the photos from this robot of a camera.
That ought to provide some great pictures in National Dragster. Well, we're ready for round number 2 in Pro Stock. You're looking at the machine of Jerry Ekman as he performs his burnout over in the far lane, ready to take on the #2 car in the sport, and that, of course, belongs to Butch Leal.
And it's Butch Leal from Blacklick, Ohio, that carries the big reputation as a lever, a guy who will get a hole shot most of the time. Jerry Ekman, you can bet he knows that. His Trans Am from Ventura, California, and Ekman is no slouch in the reaction time department either.
So both cars are 88 Trans Am. Leal and Ekman on the line.
Now, Leo won the first race of the season, the Winter Nationals in California. We've had 3 races and 3 winners in pro stock competition. It has never been tighter. It has never been more competitive. Jerry Ekman, the far lane, the bright yellow car, Butch Leal, the white machine, near lane. They stare at that Christmas tree. 4/10 of a second between the yellow and the green, but you react to the yellow or you're late. They're ready. RPM's up to about 8,000 off the mark. First is Butch Leal, but Ekman is right there. Ekman door to door with Butch Leal across the stripes. It is Butch Leal. It couldn't have been by more than inches, Paul.
I'll tell you, if Ekman had another foot or two, he just might have won that one. As we take a look at them leaving the line, nice close start. They both read the tree well. It looked like Leal had just a slight advantage coming off of the line, but then Ekman at about mid-course began to pour on the power, and it looked like they were going to come absolutely even to the line. From our second angle, this is Leal on the near side, Ekman on the far side, and Leal comes to the line just inches ahead.
Well, you don't need an onboard computer when you've got Butch Leal. You had exactly the hole shot you needed. You ran 200 slower than your opponent, but you had 200 in the bank off the mark.
Well, Steve, it's been difficult here for me in Memphis, and, you know, these Tennessee fans, I married a woman from Tennessee, and I'm trying to do the best I can, and we're having a little tough time with this car and this racetrack, and this Pontiac motor pulled me right through that time, and if I can keep the things together, it's anybody's race, as you know, again. Everybody's running the same. One guy will run good. Next time, if he gets a bite, he runs good. So we're having a good time here.
See you in a bit.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
So Butch Leal moves ahead, receives congratulations from Jerry Ekman, and there's the 8-time world champion, Bob Glidden. He hasn't been having the greatest year this year. He's ready to face Tony Christian.
And both of these drivers had very tough contests in round number 1. We saw Tony Christian get by the number 1 qualifier, Bruce Allen, and the 8-time world champion, Bob Glidden, while he narrowly defeated Canadian Alban Gauthier. It's no secret, Glidden has been struggling just a bit, but ask the competitors, and they'll tell you at any race he can fight you right back. Tony Christian, well, here's a guy who's shown us an awful lot of horsepower and tremendous driving ability, a former stockbroker, originally from Chicago, now residing down in Florida and doing this for a living.
You know what seems strange, Don Garlitz, is that all of these cars, the Pro Stockers, have chosen the near lane, while the Nitro cars have chosen the far lane. Why would that be?
That's because the near lane is smoother, and of course the short wheelbase car responds better on a smoother course.
A perfect lead for both cars as Bob Glidden gets a little squirrely on the takeoff. Christian now pulls ahead, and it'll be Tony Christian winning this run. Christian with a 7:56 at 182 miles an hour, and Bob Glidden continues to have problems this season.
As we watch this race, we see Bob Glidden and Tony Christian get off the mark even. But Bob Glidden shakes violently and, of course, gets a little out of shape, and that's all it took. And Christian moved ahead and held the lead clear down to the end. I think the shake was caused by Glidden's power was just not quite up to par.
Well, Bob Glidden really has to be scratching his head as he struggles through his 1988 season. This is the machine of Morris Johnson, Jr. It's a 1988 Trans Am. He is ready to take on Harry Scribner in his 1987 Camaro. As round 2 of Pro Stock continues, there's Scribner and his machine. Let's go to the far end and Steve.
2 races in a row. Tony Christian has defeated the world champion Bob Glidden. Feels good, huh?
Feels great. You watching TV, you heard that song, when was the last time you driven a Ford? I was singing, when was the last time you thumped a Ford?
7:56.
See you next round.
There's a man that's enjoying his season. Back at the starting line, Harry Scribner in his 1987 Camaro. It's been a couple of years since we've seen him in eliminations, and he faces Virginia's Morris Johnson Jr. in his 1988 Trans Am. He, by the way, beat Nicholas in a very close race in round number 1.
That's right, and he showed that rear spoiler to Bob Glidden at the Winter Nationals, defeating the world champion in round number 1. Morris Johnson Jr. has tremendous reflexes. All he needs is a little bit of luck to win one of these races this season. And the near line, Harry Scribner, well, they're having more fun just getting this far today. And off the mark they go. This is a good race in Pro Stock. It could be another squeaker at the finish line. It is Harry Scribner in the near lane. Oh, that crew will be delirious. Scribner with a 7:59, 180 miles per hour.
We watched Morris Johnson get off the line in exactly the same fashion he did it for the Winter Nationals when he beat Bob Glidden.
but he's not able to hold on to that lead long as Scribner begins to make more power and starts to move ahead of Johnson about mid-track. And the difference is never made up, and Scribner goes on to win the race.
Harry Scribner's yellow Camaro, first to the finish line. He's going to be very, very happy about that one.
Well, you know, to consider that the last time Harry Scribner qualified was back in about 1985 to run 7:59 and go to the semis. Great job.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. We're enjoying it a lot.
Where did all this performance come from?
Well, Bill Orndorff and Jerry Eckman have been a big part of it, and Rear Morrison Racing Engines. And of course, Mike Fujita is the sponsor of the car.
Well, you're doing a great job. Keep it out.
Thank you.
Steve, it's been so long since you've interviewed him, I'm not sure he knows what to say.
Or who I am.
Back at the starting line, here is Kenny Delco as he's ready to take on Mark Powick as we continue round 2 in Pro Stock. And this man, Kenny Delco, has a very bright future ahead. In this event, he has low ET in eliminations with a 7:49. He faces Mark Powick, who beat Warren Johnson in a very close race in round 1. Mark is from Medina, Ohio, drives that 88 Trans Am.
These are two of the brightest young drivers on the horizon, Paul. We're looking at the car of Mark Powick, who was runner-up of the Winter Nationals earlier this year. And here's the car owned by Flip Benito, who's been in the speed shop business many, many years and knows how to set up these chassis and put together these motors. They leave right together. Oh, terrific reaction time on the part of both of them.
Dead even to the mid-course. Now Delco goes ahead, and Delco with another 7:49, a 7:49, 181 miles an hour to Powick's losing 7:61, 184. The Orpheum Theater, built in 1928 at Beale and Maine in Memphis, one of the great vaudeville theaters. As we look at the pairings for the semifinal rounds, Butch Leal will face Kenny Delco. Delco with the lane choice. And Tony Christian will face a surprised Harry Scribner, and Christian will have the lane choice. Kenny Delco having a terrific day. He's with Steve.
Well, you talk about service. Kenny Delco rolled right up to our camera, already had his helmet off. Listen, 7:49, you are ruling this race.
Well, we're trying. I got to thank Sal DiPaolo and Flip Benito from Flip Speed Shop. He's the one that, backing us. And
well, they'd like to thank you for some fine driving, too.
Bob Engel picked up the motor a little bit from last race.
How does it feel to finally get into this position where you know you're quicker than Bob Glidden and Bruce Allen and Butch Leal?
Well, it feels good. I just hope I can cut some good lights and win this race.
Okay, we'll be riding with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
So far, Kenny Delco has been cutting some very good lights here in Memphis. Well, back in the Top Fuel pits, Joe Amato's crew goes to work. They have to face Dennis Forssell so far in the meet. Joe Amato has had slightly quicker ETs. At the same time, the same kind of concentration goes on over in Dennis Forssell's pit as they prepare to meet Joe Amato. And coming up next, funny car action from Memphis. We'll be back.
We told you earlier about some of the facilities here at Memphis International Motorsports Park. Well, there's also a fine road course, 2 miles, 10 turns, and instead of an S turn like most road courses, here in Memphis, they have an M turn. I'm Steve Evans, along with Paul Page and Big Daddy Don Garland, and here at the Quaker State Mid-South Nationals, it's time for funny cars, round number 2, and that is the body being latched down over Californian Tim Gross. Tim has been such a dedicated drag racing competitor. He's won 2 NHRA national events, often with his car in primer, as you see it here. Well, we understand he has finally, Don Garland, secured enough sponsorship to run the entire series, to buy the parts he needs, and I think you'll see a beautiful race car the next time it appears in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the Cajun Nationals. He's up against a man from that part of the country, at least the car is, the Candies and Hughes machine with Mark Oswald. That is one tough Thunderbird-bodied car.
Well, Mark Oswald has certainly got his eyes set on winning this event. I was over talking to the boys in the pits. They really are working hard and getting those ETs nice and consistent on this tricky track.
And consistency may be just a little bit harder to find these days with all of these complex clutches they're experimenting with. Mark Oswald, the 1984 NHRA World Champion, would like to win it again for Candies and Hughes. Tim Gross is such a talented guy, not only behind the wheel, but with the wrenches. In fact, he can build an entire funny car if he has to, and he's done it in the past. Tim Gross from Southern California. Mark Oswald over in the far lane. There is no better sponsor, no better prepared car, thanks to that man, Paul Candies from Des Allemands, Illinois. His company very famous on the river for operating a whole string of tugboats, the big ones.
And, of course, a very sophisticated operation centered out of Houma, Louisiana, as Candies makes a final check with his driver, and Mark Oswald inches up to the line now. Oswald on the far side. This is Tim Gross to the near side. Buster Couch, the starter, looking down track, everything cleared, ready to roll.
Oswald had the lane choice, and he's consistent along with all the other drivers. He's on the right-hand side. They're up right together. Oswald's car appeared to launch Carter. Tim Gross throws in the towel. It is Mark Oswald. Boy, you were right, Donna. 5:55, 268 miles per hour. That is just about the maximum that this racetrack is going to take today.
Yes, it is. The clutch department is where they're getting that ET. They're really on top of that clutch, that Candies and Hughes team.
Back at the starting line, there is the red car. It belongs, of course, to the reigning world champion, Kenny Bernstein, as Bernstein is now rolling to the line, lays the power to it, and he prepares to do battle against Ed McCulloch.
Ed McCulloch has been enjoying one of his finest seasons this year, and Bernie Federle has really been turning the wrenches on that car and getting the performance. While on the other hand, Dale Armstrong hasn't been having such a good year at getting Bernstein's car running good, and he has been definitely struggling. 1988.
Well, Bernstein won at the Gator Nationals, but the tendency this year is for him to have problems in the early rounds. Not a good year by Bernstein standards. Let's go to Steve.
Well, no one is steadier in this competition than this man, Mark Oswald, a 5:55. That's right where you need to be.
She was shaking all the way through low gear that time. I think that's about as good as it gets, but we're just happy to keep the Thunderbird going.
Can you describe that shake, the sensation that you feel?
Well, that time it was spinning the tires pretty good. When it does that, it generally shakes. It gets awful hard to see, you know. And I just held my foot down, and fortunately it drove through it.
A little instinctive driving?
Well, with the gearing in the cars now, really, you can't do too much pedaling of the throttle. It's pretty much the way you've got it set up. You got to go up there unless you really have something drastic happen.
So now we watch as Ed McCulloch brings his car up to the line for his dry burnout, and a bit of smoke off the back of the tires, Don.
That'll mean that Bernie Federle has got to give Ed some signals so he knows how to leave the line, or he'll do that again in the race.
They are running such a tremendous volume of nitromethane through these cars that the emergency roof hatches are open for two reasons: to try to get a little cool air in there and to let some of those fumes out. I know Kenny Bernstein complained about it when we saw him in Atlanta a few weeks ago. Out of Dallas, Texas, Bernstein, the three-time world champion. Ed McCulloch from Hemet, California. Well, there's nobody tougher behind the wheel of a funny car. The man has experienced it all.
Ed McCulloch comes to this round with the victory over Dale Poldy in round number 1, while Kenny Bernstein had a very close race against Don Perdome in round number 1.
Bernstein is a Buick Riata body funny car. Ed McCulloch with the Oldsmobile body, both a couple of replica GM products. You saw Bernstein crewmen turn on the onboard computer. They are staged and ready. Right off the mark, together. Kenny Bernstein, Ed McCulloch. Now McCulloch's horsepower take off. Bernstein has shut the car completely off. A problem with that machine, apparently, anyway. Ed McCulloch, oh, is he going to be tough? 560, 261 miles per hour.
Yeah, he's definitely right in the hunt. Since he lost that 45 pounds, he's sure been hungry to win these races.
And back in Gary Ormsby's top fuel pit, they call it liquid gold. It's nitromethane, about 20 gallons of it goes into the machine in preparation for Gary Ormsby's run against Darrell Gwynn. At the far end, Steve is now with Ed McCulloch. Steve?
Well, a 560 puts away the world champion, gives Ed the Ace McCulloch his, sixth consecutive win light in 2 races. The dry burnout, it smoked the tires a bit. Could you feel that?
Yeah, Steve, we've been doing that right along here. You know, it's telling us that it's marginal. It's telling us that it's real close. We'd actually backed it up a little bit for that run to be safe, and I guess, it did slow down a little bit, but we're still in here, and we got by Kenny.
What are you doing in the cockpit to fight that traction problem?
Well, you have to drive it a little different. Bernie comes up and he tells me, what it did, and he gives me some instructions, and, we've got a real good relation, and it's working good right now if we can keep it going.
Okay, see you next round.
Thank you, Steve.
So back in the staging lanes, Jim Head is now helmeted and ready to go. In just a moment, he will face R.C. Sherman as funny car eliminations continue. Memphis, I'm Paul Page with Don Garlitz and Steve Evans as TNN presents the NHRA Quaker State Mid-South Nationals. Well, Kenny Bernstein continues to struggle. Now he's with Steve.
Well, guys, as Kenny Bernstein rolled to a stop down here, the car had a pronounced clunk in the drivetrain. Something go wrong, Kenny?
Yeah, it broke transmission rear end. Something bad back there, yeah.
So you just had no power at that point?
No, I left the start line fair. We were, I think, pretty much side by side, and then it just broke, and that was it. It was over with.
You know, on a perfect track in perfect weather, that's one thing. But a day like today, it wears on a guy and a crew.
Well, we're struggling a little bit the last couple of races with the Budweiser Quaker State Buick, and it's hot. You're not winning. It's tough.
Okay, let's go back to you guys.
Well, Steve, out on the line, it's this man, R.C. Sherman, who is now ready to face Jim Head as we continue with Funny Car here in Memphis.
Head, who is an engineer, has a different type of a funny car drivetrain. And you'll notice that he has taken the near lane and has lane choice.
Question is it a better lane, or mechanically is it better for the car? Don mentioned that this car has an entirely different drivetrain. Earlier, Steve took a look.
It takes about 200 horsepower to turn one of these 1471 superchargers. Well worth it, though, when you consider the net gain is about 1,200 horsepower. Now, it also takes horsepower to turn the underdrive two-speed transmissions in these funny cars. Again, about 200. Now, that was well worth it when that lower gear ratio got you off the starting line much quicker. But now with all the power these cars are building, the final drive ratio and the differential and the underdrive transmission are almost the same. Now, that is not a two-speed transmission in Jim Head's car. It looks like one. It's just a case. There's a shaft running through it. He has no transmission whatsoever in this car. Head says the secret in all of these cars, as far as he's concerned, is the clutch. 4 stages. It is acting as a transmission, shifting gears, if you were, 3 times down the racetrack. In fact, he says the clutch is so important that the engine is nothing more than an ignorant nitro-burning flywheel.
So Jim Head taking a gamble coming to the near lane on a day that is a record 91 degrees.
R.C. Sherman formerly campaigned his own funny cars, but has now found a permanent seat and a good relationship with car owner Nick Bonfanti in this machine. It's farmed because they had a little brush with the guardrail a couple of weeks ago up northeast somewhere. Jim Head, well, Paul Page told you he's a graduate engineer from Columbus, Ohio, one of the prettiest cars on the property and one of the most interesting. Now, on a very good racetrack, Don Garland, wouldn't you still want a 2-speed?
I would. I don't believe that the high gear cars are here yet. They're just a little bit too heavy. Now, if they hadn't put that extra weight on the cars, perhaps we might have got by with high gear. But with the additional 100 pounds, I just can't believe that it's the best way to go.
Well, plus Jim Head's car is a bit overweight anyway. It's about 200 pounds over the minimum. That could be an advantage here. It is Jim Head and R.C. Sherman, a good drag race, an excellent drag race. Jim Head, the winner in the near lane, but not by much.
It's a good thing that R.C. slowed down just a little bit because he was right there with him. As we watch the cars leave the starting line, we'll see that they move very well. Now, you'll notice just a little bit of smoke comes off of Head's car, but that's a normal situation in a high gear car. That's the clutch gathering up the engine. See, they don't have the 2 speeds, but then as they go on down, the high gear does pay off a little bit. As you'll see, Head's car move just a little bit ahead of Sherman at the very end.
Well, Jim Head, R.C. Sherman had a brilliant start, and I thought for a moment that you were in trouble.
Yeah, I saw him for a little while. Kind of scared me.
I'll bet you did, but you drove around him in 571. That will cost you lane choice, so to Mark Oswald.
Yeah, we've lost a little ET. We're not exactly sure why. Better be lucky than good.
But apparently lane choice doesn't affect Jim Head at all. Well, we're taking a look at the machine of Chuck Etchells. It's an 88 Trans Am as he lays the power to it and prepares to face John Martin in his 1988 Beretta.
This has been by far the best season that John Martin has ever enjoyed in Nitro Funny Car Racing, and he's got a shot here to go to the semifinals. John Martin got past the always tough Tom Hoover in round number 1 to get to this point. The roof hatch open again, trying to get some of those nitro fumes out and a little bit of air conditioning going. You see Jam Air on the side of the car. That's no big corporate sponsor. That's John's own heating and air conditioning company in Upland, California. He lives in nearby San Dimas. Now, Etchells is the same kind of a story. He's a businessman from Woodstock, Connecticut, and he runs his own team with his own wallet and got by John Force, as we showed you earlier today. Now, the crew chief on this car, the far car there, the pretty blue machine, is Paul Smith. He's been around drag racing, well, since they paved the first racetrack. John Martin and Chuck Etchells on paper, anyway. This one looks like, well, maybe a bit of a toss-up. If there's an elapsed time edge, it'd have to go to Etchells. Etchells smokes the tires. Etchells is all done, and John Martin has some control problems as well.
but Martin, his crew chief, Ronnie Swearengin there, very happy with a 567, 252 miles per hour.
Well, they'll be talking in the staging lanes because the near lane has won the last 2 rounds. That bridge, almost a logo for Memphis, carries I-40 west into Arkansas. As we look at the pairings in funny car, John Martin will face Ed McCulloch. McCulloch will have lane choice. And Mark Oswald will take on Jim Head. There, Mark Oswald will have the lane choice. Now, the semifinals and Top Fuel are next. Let's go to the pits and find out what Don Garlits thinks.
Behind me, Darrell Gwynn's crew put the final touches on their Top Fuel dragster as Darrell gets ready to go into the semifinals of Top Fuel Eliminator here at Memphis. But I've been doing a little snooping around in the pits, and I'm going to give you my predictions this afternoon. I think that Darrell is going to beat Ormsby in this round because he had a very good 5:26, and in this afternoon's heat, that's extremely good. Now, on the other side of the ladder, it could be a little different story where Amato faces Forcell. The times are very close, 5:34, 5:40, so those cars run real good. But so I think it's going to be the veteran and the starting line that's going to make the difference, and of course that's old Joe is going to probably come through again with one of those leave you at the gate deals.
Well, when you talk about leaving you at the gate, Amato had the best record in the sport for leaving last year. Lee Beard makes final adjustments on the fuel system on Gary Ormsby's car as they prepare to face Darrell Gwynn. We'll be back.
Bernstein's day here at Memphis is that his truck can beat the traffic. The big red car has been knocked out of competition, and you can bet they'll be doing some testing between now and the next race. All right, it is time for the semifinals in Top Fuel Eliminator. You're looking at Joe Amato, the car that he ran last year. It's not as long as some of the other machines in competition. We've talked about that. But Joe Amato's reflexes can sometimes make up for any differential there may be. Dennis Forcell, his rookie year in Top Fuel, and he's got a shot at going to the finals already. Paul Page.
Well, we talked earlier about the longer wheelbase cars performing better here on what is really a very tricky track. That is to say, there's nothing wrong with the facility at all. It's just very difficult to read. The temperatures are now record low 90s, so reading the track is really the key.
And all eyes now on the huge rear slicks. Both drivers get traction. Amato, something goes wrong with Amato's car. The engine ailing for Dennis Forcell, but he gets the win light. Imagine in only your 4th race as a pro in this business, you go into a final round. Well, let's recall that Dennis Forcell spent about 10 years racing alcohol cars, the little brothers to these machines.
We can see the blower turning, the belt coming off of Amato's car.
Back at the starting line, Darrell Gwynn begins now to inch his way up in the semifinal round of Top Fuel. First of the 2 burnouts now complete. The tiny front wheels rolling with incredible RPM. The heritage there coming from an aircraft landing gear. And this is Gary Ormsby as he rolls forward now. The matchup is Ormsby versus Gwynn. One of those 2 men will face Dennis Forcell. Right now, Forcell is with Steve.
Dennis, in only your 4th start in Top Fuel, you're going into the final round. What a day.
Yeah, out of sight, man. We're doing the deal, man. It's feeling just great.
Well, over your shoulder, I see a lot of oil all over the wing struts, the parachute packs, maybe some work to be done.
Well, let me quote Amato. Get the green light first, worry about parts later.
This has got to be a business where you've got to have lots of parts, believe me.
A final shake from Darrell Gwynn's father, a tradition at the starting line in NHRA drag racing, and you look down the long side of Darrell Gwynn's machine as he inches forward now. Here on the near side is Gary Ormsby.
And as far as reaction times are concerned, both of these drivers, based on last season, are just about the same. And Gary Ormsby has to know that he's in top. He's racing the quickest car of the entire event at 5.17 seconds. Darrell Gwynn. Both drivers react at the same time, and Ormsby has problems. Ormsby, much like Amato, has something go wrong mechanically. Oh, my. Darrell Gwynn. Now, just terrific 524 in the heat of the day at 270 miles per hour. And the blower belt is also missing off of Gary Ormsby's car.
This is W.C. Handy, the father of the blues. Memphis Blues, St. Louis Blues, Beale Street Blues. We're in Memphis, where the Top Fuel final will see Dennis Forcell facing Darrell Gwynn, and Darrell Gwynn will have the lane choice.
Ed McCulloch, deep in thought as he stands in the trailer door watching Bernie Federley and the crew massage his Oldsmobile funny car for the semifinals to come. 12 quarts of 60-weight racing oil being poured into that engine.
as they're ready to face John Martin's team. They work on their engine, preparing the head gaskets, and are getting ready to go racing. More semifinal action coming up next.
National Motorsports Park as TNN presents the Quaker State Mid-South Nationals. 28,000 people having a terrific time. If they think it's hot in the grandstands, they ought to be back in the pits, working as hard as Jim Head's crew is. Head knows that he has got to build some more horsepower if he's to handle Mark Oswald when we get to the funny car semis. We told you before, Eddie Hill didn't qualify. He's probably halfway back to Texas, right? Come on.
We're back here in the pits. Eddie Hill signing autographs. The fans love it, but I'm sure Eddie Hill is not too happy about the situation, not qualifying at this event. Ed, you kind of got a little reprieve here with Amato going out early, LaHaye going out early, and of course if Darrell Gwynn wins, they won't put him up there ahead of you. Got any plans?
Well, we're just going to try to make up as much ground as we can. We had a lot of luck today with the other guys that should have been further along in the program than they were, going out as early as they did. So good luck for us, bad luck for them.
Are you going to go back now and make any definite battle plans for Baton Rouge?
You bet. We're going to gear that turkey up.
That So we'll look for some nice numbers down there.
Well, I certainly hope so, yeah. We're just going to try to not smoke the tires. We accidentally found what felt like an extra couple of hundred horsepower this weekend with a couple of little tweaks that I didn't really expect to help, and it worked against us this weekend. But maybe if we can get the thing geared and clutched to where we can get down the racetrack, it might wind up making us some money on down the year.
We'll see you there.
Okay, see you.
Well, actually, Joe Amato did go far enough in competition today to take the points lead away from Eddie Hill for the World Championship. Okay, it's time for the Pro Stock semifinals. First up will be Tony Christian versus Harry Scribner. Don Garlick, some predictions from you.
I'm going to have to go with Tony Christian because of his performance. You know, he beat Allen and Glidden earlier, and that makes him plenty tough in my book.
Plus, he's a full-time pro on the NHRA circuit. Harry Scribner kind of hit and miss, certainly having a great day today. The 88 Beretta in the near lane, the Camaro in the far lane, a couple of years old, the bright yellow car versus the red and white machine. Buster Couch, the starter, watching both drivers, and a red light. A red light for Harry Scribner. And Don, I think that was just a case if he figured he had to gamble if he was going to beat Tony Christian. I'll tell you what, if he was thinking that way, I'd have to agree. Christian, a 7:52 at 182 miles per hour, and he, too, had a good reaction time. Harry Scribner's, well, he was just anticipated the lights and law.
In the meantime, up at the starting line, the wheels spin on Butch Leal's machine as he makes preparations to take on Kenny Delco.
I'll tell you something, if Delco beats him, he'll have to beat him with power because I guarantee you Leo will get him off the line.
Let's go to the far end now. Steve is with Tony Christian.
Well, Tony, you know you're having some impact when you start forcing competitors to red light as far along as the semifinal. 7:52 for you.
Oh, 52, good. I stepped up a little bit. I need it against this Delco boy. He's running good. Or Butch. Let's see who wins here.
We're down here taking a look with Tony Christian.
Come on, Butch.
You can bet he wants Butch to win because Butch is the slower of the two cars.
The semifinal round of Pro Stock. Will it be Kenny Delco in the near lane or Butch Leal in the far lane that will face Tony Christian in the final round?
And if there's a driver here today that can lead with Butch Leal, it's young Kenny Delco from Center Reach, New York. It is Leal again out front. Leal, but this time by only 2/100ths of a second. Is that going to be enough? It is Leal. It is Leal. No! It is Kenny Delco from behind. 750 to a 752. Theoretically, the dead heat. 181 miles per hour from Kenny Delco.
As they leave the line, Butch Leo again gets that patented Leo leave, but he couldn't get enough to hold off the strong charge of Kenny Delco's 750. You know, Steve, you can only leave so early and you'll get a red light, and of course Butch knows that. So you only got so much. You can see Delco moves out in front just a little bit.
But that little bit was just enough. So now the pairings for the final round in Pro Stock. Kenny Delco will have lane choice over Tony Christian. Now Steve's with Kenny.
Kenny Delco, a 750, is going to give you lane choice over Tony Christian. But you know what he told me just before he left? He's going to pretend you're a Ford.
I know.
That's how bad he wants to beat you.
Well, I've run him 5 times already, and 5 times he hasn't made it down the track.
One of you have...
Yesterday I ran him in a time run. He broke the motor.
This is an opportunity for a new winner in NHRA National Championship competition.
Well, I hope it's me, because we need one.
Your fans hope it's you as well. Kenny Delco, what a fine young Pro Stock driver.
Now Don Garlitz is in the pits with his semifinal round of funny car predictions.
The Candies and Used car nearly got low ET of the meet in the second round with a 5:55 and just missing it by a few thousandths. So I believe that the Candies and Used car with Mark Oswald at the wheel will easily go into the finals here at Memphis. On the other side of the ladder, McCullough should beat the winner in that side. He's running real good, 560. He seems to be real steady. So it looks to me like it's going to be a McCullough-Oswald final.
Of course, John Martin or Jim Head may have something to say about that. This is Dennis Purcell's pit area. He's having the best day of his career as they prepare for the final round in Top Fuel. We'll be back right after this.
International Motorsports Park, where for 4 days over 650 race cars have been battling over the distribution of a $700,000 purse. I'm Steve Evans along with Paul Page and Big Daddy Don Garlitz, and inside that plastic canister is Ed the Ace McCullough as we are ready for the semifinals in funny car.
And McCullough has decided on the far lane once again. Now his opponent, John Martin, has been to the semifinals one other time this year, but John Martin in the car, just passing into the screen, has never been to a final round.
Big Daddy, the drivers out there don't seem hurried, neither do the crews on a particularly hot day. We know they don't have radiators on board. They don't even have water circulating through the heads, just the block. What racing temperature is ideal?
They seem to like about 180 degrees, Steve. And the reason it takes a long time for them to get that up, those big solid aluminum heads take a long time to build heat in them. So the drivers are purposely taking extra time. It doesn't make any difference about the temperature of the outside air. The engine still comes up about the same.
So the aluminum heads dissipate that heat so fast that it takes a while to get them up to where they're good and toasty.
Yeah, there's a lot of material there, and it has to have that heat. What they call it's a heat sink.
All right, in the far lane, it is Ed the Ace McCullough. That's the lane he's most comfortable in. In the near lane, it is John Martin, who's trying for a career best. If he could get to the final round today, it'll be the first time ever in a half a dozen years of racing. And, of course, the enemy for both drivers is that Christmas tree starting system. McCullough was the first to move up. Now this man, John Martin, he has pre-staged, neither driver wanting to inconvenience the other, but neither wanting to be hurried by the other either. So this race is just about at hand. And they're off first. It appeared that McCullough might have had a little bit of an advantage. John Martin's front wheels were off the ground. He couldn't steer the car. When he got off the throttle, it unloaded, and that was it for John Martin. A 5.65 for Ed McCullough, a solid run at 258 miles per hour.
So far, your predictions are running good, Big Daddy.
We watch Ace McCullough there make a beautiful start, getting an immediate edge on Martin. Something then happening to Martin's car, and it moves over out of the groove into the traction area that's not good, and of course that's a big problem. You notice he almost crosses the center line as he tries to regain control of the car as the McCullough goes on down the track for the win.
So who will Ed McCullough face? Will it be this man, Mark Oswald, as he inches up for his burnout, or will it be Big Jim Head? Well, that car of Mark Oswald sounds wonderfully powerful, and I think we indicated earlier that this machine, Jim Head's car, had to find some horsepower somewhere. He told us that he thought he indeed found some. Now, Jim Head sits in that near lane where horsepower has been a problem. The near lane has not really been the choice of winners. Now, Steve's at the far end with Ed McCullough.
565. Yeah, it slowed down a little bit, but, you know, I don't know, see what Oswald runs this time, or Ed, whichever one's going to win this race, see who we race next round.
You know, when you're winning as many rounds as you are, it's a lot harder work, isn't it?
Well, you know, Steve, this thing actually has been very good to us. The motor combination is being so forgiving. We haven't had the heads off of it all day. How about that?
That's incredible for a funny car.
Yeah, it really is. It's working real well.
Okay. See you then.
Thank you.
Ed McCullough cruising through another good day. There is Mark Oswald's car as it inches up to the line. His opponent, Jim Head.
You can bet the heads have been off that one, huh, Big Daddy?
You bet. That car's been completely apart every run. They're not leaving a stone unturned. They want to win this race.
How risky is it? We talked about this a little bit at Atlanta, but with a funny car, how risky is it to not take it apart?
The risk that I see, Steve, is that you could have a collapsed oil ring and you would still leak the engine and it would show good.
All right, you wouldn't know that until you started the engine for the next race, and then it'd be too late.
On Hill's final qualifying attempt, he had smoke coming out of the cylinder because the head hadn't been off of it.
All right, we talked earlier about Jim Head and the high gear only combination he's running. The only thing about that is that it tends to load the motor very hard, pull it down coming off the starting line, and he can have some bearing problems doing that.
And it's a little bit more forgiving on a tricky surface like this, but it's no advantage after you get going.
Well, there was no signal from Paul Candice to Mark Oswald to take it easy, because on the dry burnout, the car hooked up. That dry burnout is kind of an indicator of the run itself. So Oswald in the far lane, Jim Head in the near lane. Only one will survive to race Ed McCullough in the final round of this Quaker State Mid-South Nationals. Head poised and ready. Likewise is Oswald, both waiting for that flash of yellow. They've got it, and they move pretty much together. Head maybe with an early advantage. The car walks around a bit, and the big power of the Thunderbird pays off. It will be Mark Oswald who gives Ed McCullough a 5:62.268 to a 5:65.268. Also, what drag racing?
The finest drag racing in the world, Steve. The kind that the fans paid the money to see. Watch them leave the line, almost tied together. But then it begins to happen. A little bit of smoke, but that's normal for the high gear car. Oswald then immediately gains an advantage, picks it up, and goes on to win the race, 5:62.
As we look at Memphis Harbor, here are the pairings for the final round in funny car. Mark Oswald will have the lane choice over his opponent, Ed McCullough. Now, let's go to the far end. Steve Evans is with Mark Oswald.
Well, Mark, Jim Head roared by here yelling, "Who won? Who won?" I had to give him a thumbs down, but to you, a thumbs up at 5:62.
Yeah, it was a close race. It was a real good race. Ours was stumbling a little bit through low gear and shaking. You know, it slowed down a little bit, but we're just happy to get by.
Jim seems to think he was ahead of you a fair distance.
No, I was ahead of him by a little bit.
Which is it? You won? Obviously.
I was pretty sure I did.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Mark Oswald and the Candies and Hughes team go back to prepare for their confrontation in final round against Ed the Ace McCullough. In the meantime, Jerry Gwynn checks over his son's car. It's all set to go as they prepare to face Dennis Purcell in the final round of Top Fuel. We'll be back with more right after this.
Well, they're hooting and hollering here at Memphis International Motorsports Park because all those fans know the big money is on the line. We're down to the finals in Top Fuel, funny car, and Pro Stock. Pro Stock will be up first. And Don, the temperatures have cooled off, a little more comfortable for everybody, and it could really affect the racing in a way.
What happens is, Steve, when the sun goes down and that temperature comes off of that track, the traction actually gets better. This would be an advantage to these cars.
And also, if the air improves a bit, and sometimes it does when it cools off, the humidity goes away a bit, you can make a bit more horsepower, and hopefully there'll be a racetrack that can handle it. Backing up very slowly, that is the 88 Beretta of Tony Christian. Now, Christian has not been quite as quick as his opponent, Kenny Delco, in the near lane, but Christian's driving has been better.
Yes, and he's been within striking distance, only talking about 200ths of a difference in the ET. He could easily make that up with his reaction time. But Delco's been real strong with those 740s all day long. This is a heads-up race in my book.
Oh, yeah, I'd have to agree with that. The Beretta over in the far lane, it's rear-wheel drive, unlike the production Beretta. That's one thing NHRA does allow him to do, but you can't change the body. It's got to be the stock shape. Highly sophisticated pro stockers, and it is Tony Christian with just a minute advantage off of the starting, and something went wrong with Delco's car. In fact, there were sparks coming out of the machine, Don.
Yes, there was. Something was definitely going wrong. It looked to me like they were neck and neck coming down the racetrack. It could have been anybody's race, and then all of a sudden we start getting all those big sparks out from under Kenny Delco's car. Something going wrong with the drivetrain, clutch possibly. That's about the only thing that'll make all those sparks like that. We see Christian gets the advantage off the starting line, but Delco immediately moves right out. It looks to me like he gets out in front of him just a little bit and could be possibly going for the win when all of a sudden we get this terrific shower of sparks. It's about the only thing that'll produce that kind of display out there is the clutch giving up, all those hot discs falling apart.
Well, today it was the Christian taking care of the Lions, young and old. Congratulations, Tony, your first big win.
Thank you. Just want to thank my partners, Teeny and John, and especially everybody at Rear Morrison. Bruce Allen, David Rear, Buddy Morrison, Hans, Coleman, everybody down there.
Let it all out.
If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here.
You know, Kenny Duckle had some problems. That had all the ingredients to be a terrific race. Kenny, come in here for a minute if you would. Some sparks. Apparently, engine blew up, huh?
Yeah, screw the motor up.
Get a rear Morrison piece. Get rid of that
They're not
Ingles piece.
fast enough. They're not
you.
fast enough.
Well, they were today.
That was a good run.
And that's for my wife's birthday. I told her I'd win this one for her birthday. Today's it.
Tony Christian, been racing for over 20 years. He did it today.
At 40 years of age, he scores his first Nationals victory. The Funny Car Final is next, and for his prediction, here's Don Garlett.
The Funny Car Final brings us two seasoned veterans, Ed the Ace McCullough and Mark Oswald. Both of these cars are almost even, a 565 and a 562. But that 562 by Mark Oswald gives him lane choice, and that puts him in the lane that he likes the best. And anytime that you're thinking right, you got an advantage. And also, he had a 555 in the round before. So based on that performance, I'm going to give the call to Mark Oswald.
So that's the way Don Garlett sees it. The final round of Funny Car and Top Fuel coming up right after this.
3,000 horsepower, supercharged nitro-burning engines are let, the bodies being latched down on two of the finest funny cars in the world. The Funny Car Final is at hand. Ed the Ace McCullough in the Oldsmobile car. He'll be up against the bright red Thunderbird of Mark Oswald. He idles into the water and then squeezes into the throttle, opening the butterflies in the fuel injector. Oh, just a quarter of an inch or so. That's all it takes to get them hot, to get them gooey, and to create your own racetrack. Mark Oswald will do exactly the same thing.
If you've never been to an NHRA event, you really have to come in for no other reason than to hear the sound of the funny car. It's so loud you can almost feel it. Now, what about Top Fuel? Its final is coming up. Here's Don's prediction.
The Top Fuel Final makes a very interesting matchup in that both cars come from the alcohol ranks. Gwynn, the veteran of a couple of years, against Forcell, who is enjoying his finest first year in Top Fuel. But even though he's had a good performance today, I don't believe he's going to be able to handle Gwynn's steady 520s. Gwynn, your Top Fuel eliminator, in my opinion.
Well, Ed McCullough brings his machine back after his first burnout. The cackling of horsepower rumbling out of that machine and across this magnificent crowd here at this new facility. And just a little while ago, as they were preparing for final round, Steve talked with Ed's crew chief.
That engine in Ed McCullough's funny car has not been apart all weekend long. Not a single cylinder head has been removed. And Bernie Federley, if you could sell that secret, you could make an awful lot of money here today. A lot of people would like to be in your shoes.
Well, I tell you, maybe we're up for a deal. Seriously, we're just running it pretty soft. The track is sort of a situation where we can't really apply all the power the motor could make, so we're kind of running in a back-down condition, which allows us to not to have to remove cylinder heads.
How do you know everything's okay inside without looking at it?
Well, we have enough visual indicators. The spark plugs are generally a pretty good indication. We leak the cylinders, give them an air test, and that kind of tells us what's happening. We look at the bearings, give them a visual, mic the bearings, things of that nature. So we kind of have a pretty fair idea. We graph oil pressure so we know if we have any serious things wrong. It becomes a push. You could take it apart, do a visual examination, all the components, and you might do more damage by putting it back together. There's always a chance for errors. Believe me, this is the finest way to run these things.
Good luck.
We've tried the other way. Thanks, Steve.
Well, Don Garlett, as Paul Candies leans over the front of Mark Oswald's car, you heard the reference again to the track not holding the horsepower. This new track has been very challenging, very tough to guess.
Yes, it has. The situation here has been a combination of the communication between the driver and the crew chief and what the signals are. You notice a lot of signals being given to the drivers at the last minute. These are critical signals, Paul.
And they're off the mark. Ed McCullough, Mark Oswald. Another sensational drag race. It is Mark Oswald. Paul Candies looked at the scoreboard and he knows his driver had a better reaction time because McCullough won a 554 and lost to Oswald's 555.
554 for Ed McCullough. Low ET of the meet and lose the race. And right there is where it was lost. Oswald moved first, no question about it. Both cars got lots of clutch dust coming out of the back end. They basically had everything figured out right. You know, those are two very good times. 554, 555. What else can you say? but there was just a little bit better reaction time on Oswald, and that was the difference. Look at that.
Ed McCulloch runs a quicker ET, but Mark Oswald gets there first. And now the crew accepts the accolades of the crowd here. Let's go to the far end and Steve.
Well, Mark, the final round was won by a balance of power and great driving. You ran a 55 to his 54.
Well, I'm just happy for Motorcraft and Strohs. You know, they've stuck with us. You know, they've been good sponsors, and we've been to the final rounds this year, but we haven't been able to win one. That's the first one, so really happy for them.
I'm happy for you because it was your driving, ultimately, that paid off.
Yeah, I can't get no trouble this time, huh?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mark Oswald, with one spectacular lead, wins here in Memphis. There is now one more race to be run. The final round of Top Fuel, and back at the starting line, Dennis Purcell. He has never been to a final round. He's here today, but he faces one of the best in the business, this man, Darrell Gwynn.
And it's a young man that Dennis has raced many, many times, but never with nitromethane in the tank. Never with this kind of horsepower pushing at his back, and that changes everything, Don.
Yes, it does. The situation over there is Dennis Purcell probably is not as intimidated by Darrell Gwynn as some of the other guys because he has raced him so many times in alcohol. But he's got a different animal over there now. He's got a 520 car sitting in the other lane, and Purcell has not run that good this weekend, so he's got his problems.
The green light, and it is Dennis Purcell away first, but Gwynn immediately pulls up alongside, and Gwynn, by less than a car length, and he had to do it with sheer muscle. A 524 to a 531. Some of the best finals we've seen in many a moon in NHRA Championship drag racing.
Boy, I'll tell you what, that Purcell left him at the gate, didn't he? But he didn't stay there long. Notice the clutch still continuing to dust on Gwynn's car. That allows the engine to stay up, which makes it into a higher range of horsepower. And that's one of the keys here today. Slip the clutch and get the power to the ground. That's what Gwynn did. Wins the race.
Well, Gwynn won the day. There's his crew on the way. They have to be very, very happy about that. But you can't take anything away from Dennis Purcell. He really had a great day as well. Let's go to the far end and Steve.
Darrell Gwynn's first one of the season, it was a decisive one, a 524, always right there.
Yeah, we knew it was going to take that, Steve, and I have to take my hats off to Dennis Purcell. I'm really proud of him. He's a former alcohol racer and a good friend of mine. He was right there the whole way, and I knew it. 520s did it for us all day. We're real happy.
You had to move at this point in the season if you want to win that world title.
That's right. My guts and everything in me has been killing me. I've been trying to do too good has been the problem, Steve, and I just need to settle down and win some races, and that's what it's all about.
Sounds like you did some mental tuning.
That's right. I didn't think it was fair to the crew guys that I was tearing myself up, not driving correctly, but we got the Budweiser, Quaker State Dodge, Top Fuel Dragster in the winner's circle.
You did do that. Congratulations to you, your whole family, and your team.
Thank you very much.
So congratulations to today's winners, and a special congratulations to Memphis International Motorsports Park. A great future for this facility. Paul Page for Steve Evans and Don Garlitz. So long from Memphis.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by the Style Auto World Championship Team, the nation's premier source of fast lane fashions. Style Auto, the champion's choice for the style of your life.